So you guys are wondering, I heard someone ask, why it is it so dramatic? This thing that we call spirituality, especially when it comes to the awakening. We go through these dramatic phases and we adapt new ways of connecting with source, and we're visioning things and dreaming and speaking things. We're finding out new ways to relate to nature and reality. We're delving into physics. It's just all around overly dramatic. And I heard someone say, it doesn't take all that. Like, um, tarot readings and people speaking into your life, and you doing like all this extra, becoming healers and all of that. And I think it does take all of that. We're talking about an awakening. What does that mean? The awakening means that you are being, if you think of the movie The Matrix, like that's like a perfect example of what that means. When we look at Neo and how they literally had to rip him, no mercy. They had to rip him out of the matrix to wake him up for the awakening. And even those, there was one guy, I forget his name, but he got to the point where he was like, I don't want to be woke no more. Just send me back. I want to taste the thick, juicy steak with potatoes, even though I know it's not real. I want to think that it's real. I want to go back into the illusion. I don't want to be woke no more. Unless we're ripped out, I believe, by extreme measures, we probably wouldn't wake up, right? That's why we are very much considered to be asleep, because the state that we're in is very comfortable. And how else do you wake someone up or quicken someone up? You have to sometimes cause chaos for that to happen. Some of the most profound changes that I've had throughout life is, I'm sorry to say, they were very dramatic moments where I felt like I was swept off my feet and I had no other choice but to change. Many who proclaim to be awakened, you see them go through these profound changes. Our beliefs change, our habits change, our daily lives change, our rituals change. There's just, and it's not necessarily, I like to say, there's some things that I used to do that I no longer do. Not that I've forgotten those things, or not that I downed those things. Um, I have just come to learn that there is more than one way to, pluck a chicken. There's more than one way to get to where you're going. And sometimes when we are taught a certain way, we're in that teaching, we're taught that there is just only this way to do a thing, until we become old enough, or until we even become wise enough to see from our own perspective. And not saying that there's anything wrong with the way that I was doing things before. That's all I knew at that time. That's all I was told. That's all I had learned. And until I took it upon myself to learn more, to learn for myself so that I can think for myself and draw upon my own conclusion, that's all it was. But when that day came, mixed with the right circumstances, you have the awakening. And yes, you end up with this whole assortment of healers, tarot readers. You end up with people that connect when we become aware that there is more than just the 3D. You have many people that choose to experience, or they don't choose, but they end up experiencing their awakening in many different ways, however that comes to you. I don't think there's any two experiences when it comes to the awakening, though they may all seem alike. If you set everybody down and talk with them and allow them to share their personal experiences, all different. They're all different experiences. And so For those that might think that we are so dramatic, those that claim to be awakened, we are. And some of us didn't have any choice but to be that, right? How else do you survive a war, whether to stay asleep or acknowledge this morning when you woke up, things are absolutely not what they were yesterday. What they told me it was, it's more than that, or it's not that at all, right? And of course, there are those that choose not to challenge those thoughts that come up or those ideas that they have that don't exactly align with what we've been told. That's fine too. But there are those that tend to want to see and go beyond, the breach of where we've been told not to go. And so I think it's an amazing thing. Today I had a discussion with one of my coworkers. It seems like I don't care where I go. And again, as I say, just because we've awakened, it doesn't necessarily mean that we've changed. No, I think we grow and we evolve. Not that evolving does mean changing, but I think there's a part of us that expands, and it grows, because I don't care where I go or how far I get away from where I've always been. It's almost like the same energies, the same ideologies, the foundation always meets me there. And so though I've grown past what I've learned when it comes to what I believe and how I see the world, my worldview, foundation is still there, right? My foundation was very much in, religious beliefs, even to the point where I felt called in that way. And I still feel called in that way. I feel like I have come to see that I get to really be creative and choose how I give that back to my creator, right? And if you don't see it that way, if you feel like you need to align with certain beliefs, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are those of us that feel liberated in a way to be creative in how we give our gifts back to the creator, how we get to express our calling in response to the creator. But I don't care where I go, I always end up coming back around to and drawing in people to me who are believers and who are versed in the Bible, of which I am too. And so I have this coworker that I've known for a short while, and come to find out, she's one of the leaders in her Bible study, and they are studying feasts. Now, this is the second time in a matter of a few weeks that I've had the same exact discussion. And so I say that to say, and it's about the feast, and we're talking about how God has called us to express our belief, and how he has called us through history, and this call and response to him, how he wants us to respond. Or I'm not going to say he, I'm just talking biblically. When we think of in terms of the Bible, we're talking about a masculine God, a masculine structure, a head, right? And so we believe that we've been called in many different ways to respond in certain ways. And so we were talking about the seven feasts in the Bible today. And she was telling me how they were studying the seven feasts. And for those of you that don't know, the seven feasts were ceremonial practices that were instituted by people that felt called by God to respond in a certain way. These feasts correlated with customs and traditions. They correlated, not a lot of people talk about this, but they correlated with the alignment of the heavens. And when I talk about the heavens, I'm not talking about the literal heaven, the heavens, the stars, the moon, the sun. That's the literal heaven. And those feasts many times correlated to the heavens, right? And I know when we get into talking about horoscope and astrology, it gets a bad rap because of certain religious mindsets, and practices around how we ought to conduct ourselves. But our discussion today, which was so very enlightening, I appreciated it so much, because I began to share with her how there was a time where I did Bible study too every Thursday. But I had a teacher who was it was amazing, because the things that I learned in Bible study, I also went to school and got a BA in religious studies as well. The things that I've learned are just confirmed. Like the more I allow myself to expand and grow and be open to what is present and available in this vast universe that we exist in, it always brings me back to my core. And it's just confirming what I already know. And so as we were talking about, it's the feasts, one of the ones that specifically stood out, and I was letting her know, I was like, yeah, we used to study, in depth as well in Bible study. And I had a teacher who always taught about the feasts, one particular that he was really interested in, who and which he believed had a very strong correlation to the second coming, was the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah. And we did a lot of studying around the feast and how they correlated with the stars. And we learned a lot about what they call tetrads, blood moons, the alignments, and how it correlated with the word of God, these feasts that we're talking about, and how some of them have already been, aligned and fulfilled through history. And so the discussion got very interesting, because she was saying how she was very open minded too, and didn't just keep it biblical, but her teacher also goes into different aspects of science and other type of theories that will take us into the laws of nature and correlate them, with the Bible, and how through the history of the Bible, it always referenced astrology. And, even going back to the birth of Christ, it talks about the Magi, right, who actually followed the star, the North Star, to find Christ. And then I was thinking, I was like, yeah, that is true. And then I thought of even the word magi. What is that short for? Magician. These were not holy men. These were not men who were, I don't believe they were men who were, scholars and following this close following. I believe God chose people who are willing to listen and follow the guidance that was given universally, not just on the earth, not just, something that was written, but they were led to follow the guidance of the star, the alignment of the stars of the heavens. And many of us do that today. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the awakening. We're talking about people that are willing to be open enough to hear what Spirit is saying. And I do firmly believe that Spirit talks to each and every one of us, if we're willing to listen. We don't have to necessarily go to someone else to hear if we're willing to hear of our own accord. I believe we all have the ability to connect with our higher selves, to connect with Spirit, even to connect with those that I believe, to connect with those that have passed on. And the reason why I say that is because I have had, and still do have every day, there are things that just let me know that there is, in fact, an existence after this one. There is, in fact, an existence after this one. I have no shadow of a doubt that that is absolutely true. And one of the things that solidified that was when certain very important people that I was very close to passed on, and I continued the relationship even though they had passed on. They're very much still with me. As a matter of fact, when I was on my way to work today, when I was getting on the elevator, and I was the only one in the elevator in the flesh, but I felt the elevator filled with ancestors. It was almost like as I was, and I believe that there were, I know there's different kinds of ancestors. These ancestors were those that I know And there could have been those that I don't know, but I know for sure that there was a few in there that I know because I could feel them. And so this discussion I had just was so enlightening. And I'm always excited to talk about those very foundational things. Just because we have evolved into something more, that doesn't mean that we turn into something different. No, it's an evolution. I still hold all of my values. And there's some things that I was able to do when I was, calling myself, having these very ritualistic routines around my relationship with God. There's things that I was allowed to do within myself that I'm no longer allowed to do. And so it's not that there is this freedom or this release that we're able to have. This is all about growing closer to yourself and to your creator, right? And I don't need anyone to dictate to me what my beliefs are or what I should believe or how I should exercise my beliefs. I get to determine that, as we all should. That's what the awakening is about. And it's so refreshing to know that it doesn't just end with the very early stages of what I believe to be this thing called a relationship with God. It's so much more than that. And I believe that's what, well, at least for me, that's what the awakening was all about. It was about opening up to something greater, opening up to something greater. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I was able to do that, because there were things that I don't believe I could ever get where I was, which is why I had to really take it upon myself to learn what I needed to know. That's why I decided to go to school and get my degree, so that I can be able to decide and understand for myself and not be dependent on somebody else to tell me right and wrong, or to give me, how I should be extending and opening myself in my call and response to my creator. And so that's what the awakening is about. It's not just, I don't believe, it's just about these menial things that we have over exaggerated. And if you feel that way, I'm so sorry that that's what you've gotten out of it, because it's so much more. It really is. And I just get excited. I get excited every day when I get up and I realize that I've come to a point where I'm able to make these very important decisions for myself. It's such a weight that has been lifted, I tell you. And getting here was not easy. I paid the dues to get here. And I feel like if you have worked for something, you should very well be willing and able and ready to assume the whatever that is that you've worked for, right? And so this has been a very beautiful, beautiful experience, and I don't take it for granted. I don't take it lightly. There are times where, y'all know me, y'all know I'm a goofball, but I've earned the right to be a goofball, right? There has been times where I felt like I was going to lose my mind. There were times where my body was literally having a nervous breakdown, my body. And there were pains in my body because of the nervous breakdown that I was having that even the doctors couldn't explain. It was sheer stress. It was breakdown. And so the fact that I was able to come back from that and manage to overcome that, with the help of my creator, with the help of my ancestors and those that have been sent to support and help me to fulfill what it is that I've come here to do. I'm so grateful. And I don't waste any of it. But because I have had that level of pain and excruciating pain and exhaustion, you damn right, I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh my ass off when I get the chance to. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to be silly when I can. I'm going to love life. I'm going to take chances. I'm going to go places that I've always wanted to go and do things that I've wanted to do. That's why we've been put here. Why else have we been put here? Now, had I not had the experience of the awakening, there's no telling where I would be. I might still be in the same place, in the same mindset that I was 20 years ago. Not saying there was anything wrong with that, but I feel like I've been called to do more. That's what the awakening is about. And so, um, for those that might think that it's, dramatic and it's just about tarot and dreaming, and they always tend to think that they're healers, you know, I feel like for whoever is bold enough to step out and proclaim what it is that they see about themselves, kudos to you. Kudos to you, because there's a lot of people that are living a lie. There's something deep within that no longer aligns. It's almost like a 12-year-old still trying to get into that bathing suit that they were wearing. Everybody gave them all the attention and they want to relive that. They don't want to grow up. They don't want to accept that you're no longer that infant, right? It's almost like that kind of mindset for those that know something has to change. Something has changed and continue to live in that old paradigm. That's sad. That's sad. And I'm only saying that to those that know that something has changed and you're continuing to follow down this endless road, this endless loop, knowing that something has to change, but you don't really have the guts or the gall to step out and change it. Now, if you're okay with the same, I'm not talking to you, the same rigmarole, that's cool. But there are those that are living a lie. Oh, yeah. And every day they wake up and they tell themselves, this is okay. When everything inside is screaming, no, it ain't. No, it ain't. And that's when you end up having the nervous breakdown. That's when you end up having your body many times turn against you because it's trying to tell you something's wrong. And for some reason, it's not registering. And so kudos to those who have the nerve, the audacity to step outside of the norm. And because they realize that there's something more, that it's time to evolve, that it's time to grow outside of that box and to expand and to do what you've come to do. And so I don't down anybody. If you think you are a healer, by all means, yes, you are. You've been called to do just that, be the very best healer that you can be. And I love my grandmother. She was like our hugest encourager. And one of the things my grandma always told us, she was like, you be whatever you want to be. Just make sure you're the best. I don't care if you want to be, a night walker. You better be the best night walker that walked that street ever to be seen, right? She was the number one ride or die. Grandma believed in us. And for many of us, that's the type of belief we have to have in ourselves. Even when no one else believes, you better believe in your dang self. Even when the naysayers say that you're an imposter and you're not doing nothing, but you better believe in yourself, And so my hat goes off to those that have accepted what it is that they have really come to understand about themselves. It is so. Just in that same way, if you believe that you'll never be nothing, that you were born here to, carry the water for others, to be the tail and not the head, that's what you're going to be. Whatever you believe about yourself, that is what you're going to be. One of the most beautiful things, I'm sorry, my internet is not good back here. And so whenever it goes out, I have to take a pause. But one of the most beautiful experiences that I had that I'm appreciative for the awakening is that it stretched me. Because it no longer allowed me to be comfortable. When I knew good and darn well I wasn't comfortable, it stretched me and pushed me out of that comfort zone, out of that safe space. It gave me no other choice but to move, but to expand, but to evolve. That's the beautiful thing about the awakening, is it's going to challenge you. It's going to stretch you. And I remember when I first entered into my awakening, just the thought of being naked, and not physically naked, but being naked spiritually, emotionally, mentally. That was like, for me, it was a big thing. And that just, that was my ego death. That was the biggest ego death for me, was that I could no longer hide. Once I got over that, I was good. That I didn't have to hide. Just be me, right? Just be me. I mean, we are all human. Yeah, we all have made mistakes. Yeah, we all have growing to do, but there is nothing to hide. It is what it is. And once I released all of that superficial needing to show up and be, put on a mask and try to, it was all good from there. Everything else has been workable. I think that was the hardest thing for me, but the awakening will stretch you. And so if you're not up for being stretched and challenged and constantly, uh, pushed, then maybe the awakening is not for you, because that's what this is. It's constant growing. Just when you feel like you have, perfected one thing, okay, let's start something else. It's all about growth. And it is all about healing. That's why you find so many healers. That's what it's about. It's about healing. And if it's not, then we might be in it for the wrong reason. If you're not in it to heal, why are you in it? Why are you in it? And so, yes, it has been worth it. It is worth it. And so if you are someone who is like irritated by the awakening movement, there's just more to come. I really do feel that way. I feel like we're in a time where people don't have any other choice but to awaken. I mean, you could stay asleep, of course, and deny that things are changing, deny that there are systems that we've been practicing since we got over here to our attention. That just isn't true. Do we have the ability and do we have the choice whether or not we'll continue to believe it and continue to march with it? Yep, we do. But for those that don't mind the change, the challenge, and the growth, that's the awakening. And for those that believe in truth and living, your best life, living authentic, listen, the awakening, there's no other choice. And does that mean that you have to stop doing what you do? Not necessarily, but the understanding around choice, but to change when you realize when the sheets have been pulled back, you don't have any other choice. And so, yeah, this is real. It's the real deal. And so we also talked about, I appreciated the conversation because it just brought up all this different stuff. And one of the things that came up was church hurt. We have a lot, not that it has never been, but with social media, I think it compiles the simple little issues and make them into big, giant, situations because of social media, which is good. I think it's good. I think it's good for things to come to the light. That way they can be resolved. And many times people can be liberated because things come to the light. It's not easy. It doesn't always feel good. But, there is life after hurt, after exposure. And we talked about church hurt, and she was telling me how, she had just got back into church. She had been out of church for a while, and she just started going back and, doing some healing for her family. And it was beautiful, beautiful conversation. I was like, oh, the church hurt. Yeah. And it's one thing, we've all been hurt. Let me just say that. And we have to separate the difference between being hurt by people and being hurt by the divine. That's two different things, being hurt by people versus being hurt by the divine, right? Never, ever have I felt forsaken by the divine. Forsaken by people, almost every day I might feel that. but never ever forsaken by the divine. I am truly the divines, and I am truly, truly like in love with the divine to the point that, um, whatever the divine says, I believe it. And I'm a firm believer in trusting. I'm a fool for the divine, if you can say that, a sacred fool. And so, but we talked about that too. And I expressed to her how I felt and the fact that I'm no longer like, head over heels in the church. However, I let her know, I have a background in the church. I still believe, but I express that differently. And I understand church hurt, and so I can understand, why anyone would walk away. Sometimes it gets too painful to deal with people. And sometimes it's easier just to deal with God one on one, even though I do believe a lot of growth. We do need people. We need people to continue to evolve and to grow. And so, but you can find that anywhere. That doesn't have to end, with the church, with that situation. You can go and volunteer at the, women's shelter. You can go volunteer at the food, market, or where they give away free food. You can go and stand on a corner and express your gift freely. There's so many ways to do that. And so it doesn't have to end there, and so, but I just appreciated this conversation. And I thought that was very much not coincidental that all of this happened. And I've had all of these discussions about these biblical topics that really correlate with the end times, the times that we're in right now, and how things are changing and how it aligns with, how the stars are aligning and how all of these things are interrelated. No matter what you believe or how you believe, there is some line of truth that passes through each of us that brings us all to a place to understand that things are changing. We are experiencing an awakening. It's undeniable. And so I thought it was interesting that I saw that video of someone saying how they were just kind of irritated, by this over dramatic expression of the awakening that's happening right now. And so I wanted to start with that, but I also want to pull some tarot and oracle cards tonight, because I just feel like Spirit might have a special message for us. And what I chose was my Mushroom Spirit oracle deck, and then I chose my Tarot of Oppositions oracle deck to read from tonight. And I'm basically going to choose one card from each and see what Spirit is going to say. Okay. Okay. So, in terms of this awakening, what do you want us to know, Spirit? And if there are those that are just perplexed or confused about this awakening and how things are changing, people are using different ways to reach out and connect with their creator. This is where we are right now. And what would be your response to someone wondering about that? What would be your response to that? Because we know that there is not just one way to communicate with our creator, with God, with the divine. However you see your source, there's many ways, and we are limited. We are in these fleshly suits that have limits. However, when we look at the creator is not limited in how we are. The creator can use anything to communicate: the stars, the sky, an animal, a rock, the winds, the waves, thunder, lightning, air. He can use us. And so, what would you like to say to that in terms of this awakening that's happening right now, Spirit, this massive awakening. So we have the amethyst. Ooh, interesting. The amethyst deceiver, which is about deception. All right. Okay. All right, Spirit. Let's see. It's about deception. All right. And it's a 14, which turns out to be a 5. Fives are all about change. The amethyst deceiver is an edible mushroom. It's found in leaf litter in the woodlands and under beech trees. The amethyst deceiver is an amazing violet color. It's like a purplish color. And during wet weather, it will show a deep purple. So when it gets wet, it gets even darker. But during dry weather, when it matures, the cap changes to a very pale, almost white color, making it look similar to other mushrooms that can be poisonous. The deceiver mushroom comes to let us know that things may not be what they seem. You may be seeing things the wrong way, or there is deceit of some kind appearing before you. Not all deceit is bad. It can be a blessing in disguise, and it may not always be a conscious thing, right? Are you deceiving yourself about something? Are you not allowing yourself to see what is right in front of you because you haven't taken time to truly see it, or do you not want to see it? So this card is like a trickster card. It can talk to you in riddles, but at the same time, it can make you face the reality of what is not seen. Okay, there could be a person or an issue in your life that keeps changing like a chameleon, or something that you have perceived wrong. Take a closer look at what puzzles you about the situation or the person. Is it logic saying one thing and your intuition saying another? Let your intuition be your guide always. When things appear to be one thing, but they're actually another, your intuition will still know. Your intuition is your soul compass, and trust it, right? Trust it implicitly. Lastly, sometimes assumptions are made about people or situations, and this can come from a limited understanding or lack of interest in really getting to know more about a situation or about others. So it would be wise to take time to really observe and research the situation until you are 100% sure of what you're looking at. And don't let looks be deceiving. So there's something that could be a little misleading about how the awakening is being seen or perceived. There may be things that people have completely just shut off. It's like, well, if it's not that, then I want nothing to do with it. Well, what if the divine God, source, our creator, was speaking to you through that thing that you refused to listen to, right? There are stories in history where God came to people in a certain way, but because he did not come in the way that they expected, they disregarded it and missed out, or they perished, right? And so I feel like this is just a warning. It's a reminder to not be deceived. And I don't know why that scripture is coming up to my mind. Scripture's coming out. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. What a man sows, he shall also reap. And I think that's also true with anything, not just with spiritual things, not just with religious things. That's everything, right? Practical things too. Don't get it twisted, right? Where you sow, that's going to reap, right? What you sow, that's where you're going to reap. However you sow, that's how you're going to reap, is what it's saying. Don't be deceived. And one of the other things that it said was use your intuitions, decide. And when I talk about using your intuition, I was talking about how I had to take the extra step to be informed about this thing that I felt called to, or drawn to, or committed to, not blindly, but to develop myself, to get the information that I need so that I can make a decision for myself, not based on what someone told me or what someone is, telling me that my creator is saying, but you go connect for yourself so that you can know for yourself what's right and what's wrong for you, so that you can use your intuition and decide what's right and wrong. Okay. Or what's deceptive and what's not. Okay. And so there's a lot here when it comes to the awakening, from every standpoint. It was talking about things looking like one thing when it's actually another. Don't be quick to just push something aside and misjudge it before you actually get all the facts and really understand it. I'm not one to disregard anything. I don't Just because you listen, that doesn't mean that you accept what you're listening to. It just means that you are allowing yourself to be educated to make a better informed decision. Maybe there's no decision to be made. Maybe it's just allowing you to understand someone else's point of view better, or why they do what they do, or why they're interpreting something a certain way, or why they've chosen to do what they do. There's a lot here about not being deceived, not deceiving ourselves. I feel like there is a lot of change that's happening, and many will continue to walk forward down a road that has told them in many different ways, listen, this ain't where we going. This is not where the answers are. It's not working anymore. And that's okay if that's what they choose to do. But let every man decide for himself what's right. Okay. That's what the discernment is about. Yeah, we have strength here coming out. And strength is all about standing on your laurels, and you standing strong on what it is that you have worked for. The strength is all about cycles. It's almost like we've been around the block enough to know. All right, for whoever this is for, really don't nobody have to tell us anything because we have done it. We've been around enough to know, or we should. And this is not about you being in a place, even if you are in a place where you are considered to be like some great leader and you're fabulous and you're strong and you always end up on top. Even for those, be careful that you don't, become egotistical, even in your strength, right? This is almost like really being grounded and humble about what it is, who you are. Like, be really grounded about that with the strength here, lest you fall. Be really grounded, be really careful. Be careful about perceiving through the ego, because the ego many times will tell us that we're right, or we do it the best, or there's no one better, than us. But be careful about that. This is all about understanding who you are, standing in your power, but also being balanced with humility too. You don't have to, go out and show your strength to know that you are strong. You don't have to go out and, whip everybody on the streets just so they know that you're the baddest thing on this side of town. You don't have to do that. You just have to stand in your power. I mean, if someone tries you, granted, they gonna find out. But let them find out. You don't have to go and shout it from the rooftops that you're the baddest thing on this side of town, right? You just know who you are. And if someone tries you, yeah, protect yourself. Do what you got to do. But that comes with, you know, the necessity of having to do that. The strength is all about knowing who you are, being very confident in that. So confident that maybe nobody even knows but you until it's time to find out. But there's a simplicity with the strength of not having to prove anything, or, being overly confident that you're right, or that, everything should be seen from your point of view. There are others that have different experiences that are different than yours, that see things differently for a reason. And so be careful, right? Again, that you don't deceive yourself. And then we have the star, the very healing card. Um, it's a card that demonstrates the calling to this place of rest. Hmm. Of which we are all called, I'm hearing. We're all called. But it's a matter of who will listen. Hmm. Who will listen? We're all called. But who will listen? That's the question. Who's willing to hear what Spirit is saying? That's what the star is about. The star is guided in a certain way to a certain place. And because you've allowed yourself to be guided, you find the rest. You find what you're looking for. That's a beautiful card coming out here, because there is a certain connection that you have if you listen, if you acknowledge it. The star is actually a card that proclaims a very selective position, right? But again, it goes back to hearing. Who's willing to hear? And lastly, the King of Pentacles, which is a very beautiful card too, because we're talking about responsibility. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. We're talking about responsibility. This is not just privilege, pretty privilege. That's not what this is. And if you've made that transition, I do really think you know the weight of carrying something like an awakening, if I could say that. It's not just fun and games. It's not ice cream and candy. It's nothing like that. Like I said, there's a lot of healing that goes into this. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of responsibility that is poured on us, the individual that has accepted the awakening. No longer can you look to someone else and place the responsibility on someone else. We are all really responsible for ourselves. And the King of Pentacles is all about grounded, balance, being connected in our bodies, being connected in the physical realm, not being so heavenly minded that we forget about what's happening here. It's a balance. Yeah. And though I would like to, me myself, I would like to just fly away into La La Land. Spirit keeps pulling me back. And as I said, there's just this interesting alignment that Spirit has for me. And I believe we all will have that experience if you're paying attention. Like no matter where I go, I always end up making certain connections, and Spirit ends up really directing me, letting me know where I'm supposed to be because of these connections and the information that I gather through these connections. It doesn't matter if it's people that I know or people that I don't know, right? It's not even about that. It's about hearing what Spirit is saying. And so I don't care where you go, you can't get away from Spirit. So if you've been called, you might as well accept it. Accept it with grace and with gratitude and humility. That's my advice. And I think it is definitely, I see it as a opportunity. I see it as a privilege. Like, I definitely don't take it for granted. And I see it as a lot of responsibility as well. And so, yeah, I just felt like I wanted to respond. I didn't need to. I just wanted to respond to, the comments about the awakening and how people are experiencing that, and the overflow of people having these new experiences and ways that they're connecting with their source and how they're healing, this outpour of healing, of healers emerging. Yes, all of that. This outpour of finding ways to connect not only with our source, but with those who have always been around us from day one. The only thing that has changed is us. It has always been. We've always been surrounded by our ancestors and by those that have come to assist. Many would call them angels, many would call them guides. They've always been there. We've just have not been open to it because we have been connected. We felt like we needed to connect specifically in a certain way. Well, that is changing. Yes, it's changing. And whether we like it or not, that's what it is. And it's a beautiful thing. Who are we to try to determine how God can speak, how God can move, and so that's what it is. That's my spiel for tonight. And I hope it has been encouraging. If you have any questions, any comments, keep it respectful. Feel free to comment. Let me know how you feel. And if you are someone who feels like that, that's fine. I'm not saying you can't feel like that. You can. I just wanted to give you a different perspective on that, on what's happening and why, and the importance of what's happening. We're all involved, whether we want to accept it or admit it or not. It's happening. Okay. And just like, and I hate to bring it down to these terms, it's like there was a movement, there was an era, right, of what did they call it? Segregation, right? And during segregation, it was unlawful for people of color to be with people of non-color. And there came a time when there was a generation that got a different revelation. And the revelation that they got was that, hey, we're all human. We all bleed. We all hurt. We all want love. Why can I not be with someone that is of a different color? We're the same. There was a revelation that was given, right? And since there were those that were willing to cross the lines, right? Now we have what we call a non-segregated community, public world, or whatever you want to call it. In that same way, this is no different. This boils down to our values, our beliefs. Yeah, we're talking about religious practices. It's no different. We have a generation that has a different revelation, a different experience, and a different understanding, and sees a different way to connect, not only with each other, but also with their creator. And so there are going to be those who choose to connect in a different way, whether we believe it or accept it or agree with it or not. It is true. It is happening. And it is true for many of us that have had the awakening. Just like if someone fell in love with a Black person back then, you could not tell them that they were not in love. You could not tell them that color didn't matter. It didn't. And that is true here in this situation as well. There is what has been established as a certain way of connecting with God. Well, that is no longer true for the majority. There has been a shift in the mindset. There's been a shift in the experience. And there will be those that continue to go the way that it has been gone for the past centuries. And that's okay. There are still those that choose not to segregate. That's okay. To each his own. But it's also okay for those that have a different experience to open up and allow themselves to evolve in that way as well. It's all about mindset. Okay. And so that's what we're talking about today. And I ask that you follow your discernment. Okay. Follow your discernment. Don't deceive yourself, right? Follow where you're being led. But make sure that that's where you feel like you're being led and that you're not deceiving yourself, right? Otherwise, you may need to open up and make a change. I don't know. To thine own self be true. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to end it there. Thank you guys for listening. This started off as just a little TikTok 10-minute spiel, but it ended up being an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to speed it up a little bit to shorten the time. But I hope this finds whoever it needs to find, and I hope it touches you in a soft way. It's not meant to be dogmatic or to, incite any type of anger or, anything like that. It's just opening up, for a little bit of understanding. If it is, in fact, something that you might be feeling a little bit confused about, and you might have questions, feel free to ask, okay? I can be an open book. All right, you guys, take care, and I'll talk to you guys next time, okay? Bye. Leticia is my name. Blood Moon Oracle if you're spiritual, baby. All right. See you later, love bugs. Bye.